Embrace the magic.
Greetings, fellow wizards. Today we're going to do a tier list for animal companions. This is because there have been a lot of changes, a lot of patches, and we're going to value them by the following categories: tankiness, damage, whether they're good at tripping or grappling. So without further ado, let's start. So starting off with the D tier, we have the elk. And this is for a couple of reasons. You see the tripping charge? Well, it only works until level 6. After you become large at level 7, currently it's bugged and it's not working. Here you can see the elk is charging, and as soon as it moves next to the enemy, it doesn't do anything. As well, if you look at its stats, it's not particularly very tanky, it doesn't do a lot of damage, so even if the tripping charge were to work, I would probably just bump it to a C tier. Right now, I think it's a D. Next up, at D tier, we also have the Mastodon. And the reason for this is, even though it is large and beefy, it only has 2 attacks, and its main feature, which is the overrun, I couldn't quite get it to work properly. I expected it to run through all the enemies and attempt to knock them down, but as you can see here, it stopped right after the first enemy and it only knocked down 1. So maybe I'm not using it correctly, let me know in the comments, but to me this is a D tier. Now heading up towards the C tier, we have the trusty horse. And I know what you may be thinking, well, the horse has terrible stats. And yes, its stats are not particularly great. As you can see here, it has a very low AC, around 32. 33 is with dodge. And it has 3 attacks, which are not very particularly damaging. However, you can mount the horse, even being the same size. And you also get a +1 circumstance bonus when attacking smaller sized creatures. Next up, in C tier, we have the monitor lizard. And the reason it's in C is because, well, its poison ability basically doesn't work in a campaign full of demons immune to poison. Lizard Rush, I guess, is okay, but I'm not too sure if it's working 100%. It has some not great stats, and even though its bite can grapple, after the grapple it only does 1 bite attack, and as you can see later, there are better grapplers that you can choose from. Heading into the B tier, we have the Triceratops, and the Triceratops is basically a tanky boy. He has a lot of AC, so 39 without dodge, and he does quite a bit of damage with 3 iterative attacks. So overall, just very tanky and solid. Also, you get the bonus on the charging damage, which is quite nice. As you can see here, the powerful charge adds a 2d6. And if you have pounce, I imagine it will occur on the other attacks as well. So yeah, just solid overall. Next up, we have the Boar. And the Boar is also another tanky boy. And even though the Boar has a bit less AC than the Triceratops, as you can see here, 35 AC, so 4 less. It has more health, 170, which is very good. And it has ferocity, which allows it to withstand punishment for longer, basically up to its negative constitution value. So here you can see the Boar will get hit, and it now has -18 health, and it's still attacking. So between Boar and Grey Boar, choose Boar. Next up, we have the Bear. And the Bear is also very solid as a grappler, and a grappler that can tank. And this is because, as you can see here, it has fairly high AC, fairly decent amount of hit points, and 1 bite and 2 claw attacks that can grapple. And contrary to the monitor lizard, while it grapples the enemy, it also gets an additional attack besides the bite, which is the bear hug. So every time the enemy is grappled, and you're not mounted, mind you, the bear will get 2 attacks, which is the bite and the bear hug. So very nice. Next up we have the wolf at B tier. And the wolf is the first of the trip builds that works quite nicely because it gets iterative attacks, so 3 attacks with its bite, and each of them can trip. As for the teardown, I wasn't able to observe it working, but even then, doing a bit more damage is not that particularly interesting when the enemy is down. It's alright, I suppose. But yeah, the wolf is just a solid tripper overall. Next up in the B tier we have the leopard. And the leopard, even though it has a very strong early game, where I would probably rank it in A tier, and this is mostly because it gets sneak attack and it also gets pounce pretty early at level 4. The sneak attack is capped at 2d6, so late game that doesn't mean a lot in terms of damage, and it only does 1 bite and 2 claw attacks, and due to it being dexterity based, usually you can get more damage from a strength build. This is highly due to size buffs, to animal companions, and so on. So I would say A for the early game, but later on it's just a B. So I'm also placing the hissing centipede at B tier, and this might surprise some people, and because its poison is also useless, and its stats are not amazing, although it's not that bad either. 35 EC, 150 health, although it only has 2 attacks, which is a bite and a tail. So how come it gets a solid B tier? And I'm gonna tell you why. This is because it's immune to all types of prone, and more particularly it's also immune to mind effect, being the only animal that does so. So as you can see here, I can use color spray and it's not affected. If an enemy tries to phantasmal killer it, doesn't work. Neither does fear, for example. So you can try to Sirocco as well, and if you have any resist energy fire, it's still able to move and won't get prone. So all this combined, as well as having a tripping tail, which is nice, means that you can use it in many situations that you wouldn't use other animal companions. So next up in A tier we have man's best friend, the dog. And I placed the dog above the wolf because its good boy feature is extremely useful, where you get basically an extra -4 debuff to AC. And just to remind you that prone already gives you -4 to AC, so if you combine that, -8 makes it extremely easy to hit the enemies. For some reason here it's called Lizard Rush, but I think it's supposed to be Good Boy. Next up in A tier we have the Smilodon. And the Smilodon is an interesting pet because it used to have 5 attacks, then got nerfed to 3, but I'm still placing it in A tier because of its very useful features like the pounce and the rake, as well as the grabbing ability. Its stats are okay, it's mostly focused on damage, not that particularly tanky, but it's the best grabbing build, again, while unmounted, because when the enemy is grappled, it does 3 attacks, 1 bite and 2 claws with its rake. So that's 1 more over the bear and 2 more over the monitor lizard. Next up, we have the raptor. And the raptor is a very nimble little animal. While it does start a bit weak, it does get the pounce ability. It gets the most attacks, I believe, around 5. And it has agile movement, meaning it doesn't take attacks of opportunity. As you can see here, eventually it gets 1 bite, 2 talons, and 2 claw attacks. Also, it has the particularity of having the highest charisma of 14. So if you grab an archetype like Divine Hunter, you can use Smite Evil with your raptor, and you get the attack bonus from its charisma, which can obviously be buffed as well. Next up, while not technically an animal, we have the Winter Druid's Blizzard Elemental. And the Blizzard Elemental has one thing going for it, which is its stats. It has the highest natural AC at 40. It has also the best speed at 100. And it has 170 health, which ties it with the other tanky animals. So overall, it's just an amazing tank. However, it's ranged. And it doesn't get more attacks on its ranged weapon. So one idea is to just have it up front, tanking enemies while doing its whirlwind ability, or you could even invest in defensive feats like crane style and just straight up attack enemies with your ranged weapon. However, even with snapshot, as you can see here, I still provoked the enemy with an attack of opportunity. So let me know in the comments if you know of any other way to use the Blizzard Elemental, or just to avoid it getting attacks of opportunity in melee range. Finally, in A tier, we have the Ghost Horse. And this is one that also might surprise people, because I did place the horse in C tier due to its weakish stats, and the stats are pretty much the same. However, it has 2 things going for it, 1 minor and 1 major. Let's start with the minor one, and that is it's immune to certain spells like Bone Shaker, since it doesn't have any bones. Maybe there's other spells as well. This is just one that I particularly enjoyed noticing. But its main feature is the Ethereal Tether, which allows you to share health with the rider, and this means it is much more likely to survive a stray hit. And also, if you have last stand, for the first round that you trigger it, you can prevent all damage done to the mount. So that is also very nice. And finally, in S tier, we have the majestic Hippogriff. And for those who have played the Hippogriff, this is probably no surprise, but let's go through its main features. Basically, you get Heavy Landing, which is an AoE trip that also targets flat-footed CMD, because the first attack is against flat-footed. And even though its stats are fairly weak, its pounce is also combined with the flying attack, which means it doesn't need line of sight. So basically, you fly to the creature, both you and the mount attack flat-footed on the first attack, and it's very likely to land the trip, which is not even just a single trip, it's an AoE trip around it. And in turn-based, what you can do after you do your flying attack, you can take 5 foot steps, so that in the next turn or the second next turn, you can do the flying attack again. So yeah, this is my final tier list. What do you think? Would you have placed any of these differently? Let me know in the comments. Again, this is just my personal opinion based on level 20 testing and from some of my personal playthroughs. But wait, what is going on? It can't be the dreaded Hippo Mound build, where you beast shape your Hippogriff into a shambling mound and then you do a flying attack to your enemy using both a trip and a grapple attack. Damn. Too strong, too broken. Anyways, let me know your thoughts and take care.
Thank you for watching, fellow wizard. and may magic be with you.